What's good about F1? Let's ask that question.
The very tight midfield is what I will say. While, yes, we can say what we like about those at the front, let's say, the battle for 6th and 7th is actually proving to be quite tight. Gasly's really underperforming in the Red Bulls, so he's nowhere near where we expect him to be. And as a result, it's really giving a lot of midfield drivers an opportunity to prove themselves. At the minute, we have Kevin Magnussen as the highest placed midfield runner, just behind Gasly. He's currently on 14 points after scoring last time out in Spain. And yeah, it's really proven to be quite interesting. The only driver to have scored in more than 3 races of these midfield drivers is Kimi Räikkönen. Perhaps no surprise to fans of Kimi, just how well he's doing. But it's very rare to see these drivers sort of score back-to-back races, and the momentum is really hard to keep up this year. So maybe we are seeing quite an intense battle. I know we've had it in previous years in the past. Hülkenberg and Perez have come out on top. Perez is still there this year, but notably, Renault is very underperforming this year, and perhaps one to watch in Monaco. This is the last time we'll have any sort of significant update to these cars, perhaps for quite some time. So if Renault can't get their act together around Monaco, I think we're in for a pretty tough season for both of them, for both obviously Hülkenberg and their new recruit Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Renault are in a bit of trouble, actually, but I won't go into too much detail. With Monaco, it's just another factor because it is a street circuit. So many slow speed sections, so the setup of the car needs to be very different for the teams, which will be something new for them this season. As you said, Connor, the midfield's so tight. It's one small error, whether it's in qualifying or the race, you won't get any points. And I think the order will change race on race just from the track layout, to get the setup right, the conditions. There's so many factors which can change the order. And whoever does finish 7th or 8th behind Red Bull, Ferrari and Mercedes will have had an incredible season really to get there, because it is just so tight, and the battles and the racing that we've had so far from the midfield has been quite amazing really.
And from my point of view, I think the main good things about Formula One in 2019 is its ability to, at any time, produce drama, world-class drama, on a world-class stage in front of billions of people. To instantly, for example, bring us legends and heroes like the late, great Niki Lauda, for example. So F1 still has that. I think a lot of people still, in this day and age, still watch F1. I think it was mentioned on the show, maybe previous shows before. They still watch F1 because it's F1, and that is still a good thing. Yeah, I'm struggling here, guys. Don't lie. Go on, Connor.
But no, I know what you mean. It does attract the big stars, as it were.
It's still the A-list of motorsport, isn't it?
It is. Even if you look at the celebrities that come race by race, I'm sure if anyone watches the Sky F1 coverage when they do the grid, when Martin Brundle does the grid walks, they'll often run into the celebrity of the week. As it were. I know we've had, even last time out in Spain, I remember there being loads of promotional videos with Neymar, I believe, and another Barcelona footballer for Lewis Hamilton and the Mercedes team that they just invited down as VIPs. And these are top world-class footballers coming down for what is a very unrelated event. So there's always the big attraction of Formula One, the big showpiece behind it. And for anyone that's sort of into the glitz and the glamour of it, the Formula One is still very much the top class in that sense.
And also the engineering side, Formula One is still by far and away the highest, much higher than other motorsports. And if you go to a race, I went to Silverstone 2017, I think I went. The speed of the cars with high-speed turns, Maggots and Beckett's is just absolutely phenomenal, out of this world. On the TV, with the high angle shots, it might not look as good, and of course the racing could be better, but the simple speed of these cars is just absolutely phenomenal. And from an engineering point of view, the amount of downforce they produce from different areas around the car, you can't beat it really.
Oh yeah, you still got to remember Formula One has the fastest cornering speeds of any motorsport. I say purely because of the amount of downforce these cars produce. They're all obviously very specific machines, and we do still have big manufacturers in. Obviously, we talked about Renault already, but we still have Mercedes, Ferrari, and Honda, sort of big engine manufacturers that are still competing on the world market. So that's still fantastic to see these big names still want to be involved with the sport.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. It is probably the main sign that F1 is very much a healthy product at the moment. If I was Liberty, I'd be feeling pretty good about the future, knowing that with just a few little tweaks, everything could even be better, or be even better, rather. But we are currently looking for good things about Formula One, given the past few races, and I'm not one of those who immediately, just after a less than eventful race, or maybe even a processional race, which we do get in all motorsports, in all types of championships, at least a few times in a season, I'd always like to look at the positives where there are some, and mention the opposite of that when it's relevant. But I just thought, as a nice change, guys, I just thought, we, instead of going with the rest of the world, with joining that bandwagon, I just thought, actually, F1 is still the best motorsport on four wheels still today. And
I'd still argue at the very top we still have the best drivers.
Yeah.
I could definitely argue you put Lewis Hamilton in any other form of motorsports and it'd still do well. Same with even same with Vettel and Leclerc and Verstappen. I'm convinced that if you put those guys in any other form of motorsport, they'd still be the top drivers, or at least they'd adapt very quickly to those cars. So I'm convinced that it's still the top drivers, at least at the top. So in that sense, there's still the quality in the field.
Well, I think you're going down the dark alley there, because I think what happened to Fernando Alonso in Indy. Just saying.
Well,
this is a topic we can get on to.
in the interest of, we might probably mention it, but I'd only be repeating everything that I've already said about Alonso. But in the interest of keeping things positive, at least for the time being, as I say, there's really struggling here. It's still on TV, at least somewhere. And I
feel that this is just an excuse for you, Lester, just to basically bash on the series, but without
not at all. I really do want to raise people's spirits, because everyone's been getting themselves in this sort of depression circle over the past past few seasons, it seems like, and there's no need, because F1 technically is as good today, this season, as it's ever been. If you compare it with any sort of stat that you care to mention, apart from number of overtakes and number of new winners, it is still as good as it's ever been. The closeness of the racing, the speed, the technical challenge, the level, the intense level of engineering, unfathomable almost, to various degrees, that are stuffed into these Formula One cars now is quite incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason I think people being so downbeat is because Mercedes have had 5 1-2s, which is nearly unprecedented. Could make 6 this weekend at Monaco, which will be a record. And all F1 needs is, say, Ferrari, like last year, to step up to a game, challenge Mercedes week in, week out, and then we all have a proper championship battle. 4 drivers: Bottas, Hamilton, Vettel, and Leclerc. I think that would be great, and I don't think I don't think some people would be so downbeat on the championship if we just had another team challenging Mercedes on a regular basis, like we had for the first half of last year and the first half of 2017 as well. And that season could happen next year, the year after, we don't know. We're just going for a bad patch, F1 at the moment.
See,
really.
I disagree politely. I might not politely disagree later, but for now I do. And I'd say that actually F1 is, as I just said, it is technically as good as it's ever been. I mean, for example, why did we all become so depressed about records being broken? Surely that's a good thing. It means that there's a new level of, a new height, a new standard to excel to break to. It means that someone or something is doing something that's not been done before. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing, but it's not what the fans want to see. I think we'd much rather see 7 different winners in the first 7 races like we had in 2012 rather than a team making records. And yes, it is absolutely incredible.
But at one point, though, let's take that, what you just said, to with all the different people winning, let's take that to its next logical step and say, well, let's say there'd be a full season of new different winners, and then we all get sick of different winners. Maybe we want a bit of consistency. Maybe it's all a bit too, I don't know, amateur, because there isn't one overall winner. Like F1 should actually be the pinnacle of engineering and driving and skill and the whole team package that comes together. And if you've got too many winners winning too many different Grand Prix in a short space of time, it goes against the opposite of what Formula One has been all about since it began.
Well, I suppose it comes back to you only need 2 drivers to make a race, basically. And what we've had this season is fine. You've had loads of 1-2s, but the winners of those 1-2s aren't the same. Hamilton's won 3 and Bottas has won 2. So that means we have a small margin at the top. Hamilton's got 112, Bottas 105 points. And so we could still see Bottas with, we've talked about his resurgence this year in form. Nico Rosberg's eventual championship win over Hamilton brought the fans to F1. It brought the publicity to F1, not because Hamilton lost necessarily, but because there was that inter-team battle. And if Bottas can step up as he's threatened to do this year, let's say, for the rest of the European rounds, then we could very much see another Hamilton versus his teammate. And while, yes, I'm sure Hamilton will definitely have the experience to know what to do, and it will be a new challenge for him. Bottas is a new style of driver, and being a Finn, I'm sure he probably wouldn't take it so emotionally. So he could probably definitely have a psychological edge in that sense, in the same way Raikkonen always had a psychological edge at Ferrari, even when he was behind. So we could still see a very tight battle at the top, and it could create a whole lot of drama within the team later in the year, and that could still be very interesting for the sport.
It probably will be. Go on, Nigel.
That's so definitely to look forward to if Bottas can stay with Hamilton. I mean, that's the big question. Can he do it over a season? We've already seen this year in Bahrain, he would have finished 30 seconds behind Hamilton if there wasn't the race-ending safety car. I don't think anyone thought Nico Rosberg would be able to win a world championship against Lewis Hamilton in the same car. Bottas could. I don't think he will, but if he does, then that'll be surprising in a very good way.
Yeah, I think a lot of people judge F1 based on what they see on TV and what the because I think, like most of us, including Nigel, even though he's not a huge fan of social media, after every race we all jump on social media, the various platforms, and initially it's probably just like, I don't know, a human condition, and we all think, right, what was crap about that then? Maybe I just think a little bit differently sometimes, and think, well, like, let's take the positives. I've invested like 2 hours of my Sunday afternoon, sat down and watched a race. Yeah, sure, it wasn't, I wasn't screaming and shouting about it, but there were lots of stories to take away. Somewhere in the pack, I'm sure, in the midfield and the fight for the back markers, or the teams that don't want to be the back markers. There's also lots of other good stories as well, which I think don't necessarily get the same priority of coverage, because we've got to the point now where we can do a show talking about F1 and we don't even need to have even seen any of the races. We can just check out various Facebook groups or Twitter accounts and see what the fans are saying and take the general consensus. And there's that much data and information now about Formula One available to absolutely everybody, regardless of whether you have a TV subscription. There's so much information about Formula One. It's so saturated, and that, I think, I don't think it's even up for debate. It definitely is a good thing, and that will only probably get better and better with the saturation of information about F1, to the point now where you can watch, Nigel, F1 without even having a traditional TV subscription.
Yeah.
I won't mention any websites.
Indeed, I think I'll cut you off on that point, Lester. But you even look at football. You talk about sort of bad publicity on social media. It's just as bad if you basically follow any other sport, but I'll pick football as the most notable example. Think of all the people that slag off their teams week after week.
Or the opposing team.
Well, not just them, but sometimes they'll slag off their own team for terrible performances if they're not doing well. And they'll still come back every week. They'll still buy the...
like the long-suffering Norwich fan, for example.
Well, we had a very good year this year. We won the league, so I'm very happy. But I'm sure there's plenty of other teams, as you say, who do have a much harder season, and these people still go because they still love the sport. They still love the appeal of it. And Formula One's in a similar sense, in that, okay, fine, it's not like a Sunday league football match where everyone's tackling each other and the ball's up and down the field 30 times and they're shooting in the net 10 times. In the same way, it's not like touring cars where they're passing 30 times a lap and there's a different winner every race and 19 different drivers step on the podium a year type thing. But it's still, as you say, talk about the pinnacle of motorsport, it's still the motorsport we all gather around. It's still got that love to it, that inherent appeal. So I think Formula One's just having to deal with the fact it's such a mainstream sport now. It's having to deal with the same social pressures that other mainstream sports have had all of its career. It's not as if we don't watch boring sport. I'm sure golf and snooker fans would agree.
And I'm sure golf and snooker fans would also probably, maybe there's a lot of crossover fans, but yes, I mean, we as motorsport fans, I think you all recognise when most of the rest of the world don't really care that much about motorsport, and you're like the only one, like it was like, but F1, and everyone's like, weirdo. But yeah, another thing that is good about Formula One is that, and you mentioned it, just touched upon that as well just a moment ago, Connor, things like touring cars and other motorsports where they have more than one race in a weekend. Formula One still clinging to, and I think it is a good thing, Nigel, the fact that they only have one race. Yes, it's been talked about and mooted and maybe even secretly proposed to have like a qualifying race or something, but still Formula One retains that very unique one race on a weekend, and that, I think, is a great thing.
Yeah, I mean, the format is something that isn't a problem, I'd say, with Formula One at the moment. You could argue maybe there's too many practice sessions. You have 2 90-minute practice sessions and another 1-hour practice session on the Saturday. But if you're going to an event, then that's exactly what you want. You want as much track time as possible to see the cars. And I think the race is a perfect, well, maybe not a perfect length. Maybe we can mix it up throughout the season. That's what I'd like to see anyway. You can have 2 races here, have a slightly longer race somewhere else, just mix it up, rather than having exactly the same format throughout the season, because it does get a little bit stale. So I mean, you have the press conference on the same day on the Thursday, the practice session, the qualifying on the Saturday.
Nigel.
Except
We were keeping it positive.
no, I'm just saying the format is fine at the moment. It's not a problem, but it can change it up a bit.
If anyone was keeping up with W Series at the weekend, they used the Formula One format of qualifying in a single race, and for the 2 races they've had this season, people have been fairly positive about the action that's going on in the race. So the idea of a championship needs multiple races to be exciting, I don't think that's necessarily the case. We've proven that, and obviously Formula One has 70 years of proof that a single race format can at least produce exciting races. But it's just about sort of tweaking the cars. I know they're bringing in homologized parts for next year, fuel flow systems, I believe it is.
Some parts at the end for 2021.
Yes, thank you, Nigel. So Formula One are making progress, and as you say, 2021's coming around soon, and we'll hopefully see a bit of a shake-up then.
And also, another thing that is good about F1, particularly this week as well, when W Series driver Jamie Chadwick was announced as what was the official title? The Williams Development Driver. Is that the right?
Yes.
I think it was, yes. So, yeah, I'm self-editing as I speak, which is a rare and difficult thing to do for me. So I'm going to, again, keep it positive and say well done to Jamie Chadwick. And also to independent teams, still independent teams, like Williams as well, who can, on occasions, not necessarily, every other race or every single season, but, in the past few years, they have had their ups and downs, and it is still a testament to the spirit of F1, that you can still welcome minnows like Williams, who can still attract a massive fan following, maybe one of the biggest.
Well, I don't know, to call Williams as they are the 3rd most successful team in F1 history, minnows is probably an interesting statement. But I'm sure Nigel can enlighten us about Williams fans.
Oh, are you a Williams fan, Nigel?
No, I'm not a Williams fan.
Connor, what are you talking about?
Best not if I don't talk about Williams, because I'm not.
Okay, moving on. I see. Oh, okay, excellent. So, thank you, Connor.
But no, what you were mentioning about Jamie Chadwick with the Williams team. Williams have always done great promotion for female drivers. Obviously, we've had Susie Wolff in years gone by. They've had Sarah Fisher, I believe, tested for the team, and also McLaren. She was the IndyCar driver a couple of years back. Yeah. If we go back into the 1980s and 70s, I think some of the about 2 or 3 of the female drivers we had back in the 70s and 80s were all Williams drivers, basically. And so Williams themselves, I think, have done.
They have a pioneering spirit.
They do have a very pioneering spirit, especially when it comes to female representation in Formula One. So for them to sign Jamie Chadwick, I think, is unsurprising. Also, I think they also do the powertrains, I believe, for the W Series cars.
Oh, okay.
I might be wrong on that, but I know Claire Williams does have a stake in the series somewhere.
Stake. I have an interesting video, which I might dig out later on, where we actually interviewed Jamie Chadwick a couple of years ago at Silverstone, Connor.
Oh, no, not this clip.
And
oh dear.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I shouldn't, because we're keeping it positive, and I shouldn't. And I shouldn't.
Desiree Wilson was the Williams driver in the 1980s.
Oh yeah.
He was but yes. Also Lella Lombardi, the only female to score points in F1.
Excellent subject.
Drove for her. Anyway, moving on. Carry
Yes, indeed. So, good things about Formula One, and Nigel has vowed subconsciously to keep up with our. What is it? I mean, I don't even know what we're doing here, but I think we're just doing the opposite of whatever the internet does, which is instantly just start slagging things off, because I wasn't. As Connor mentioned, there were like cars flying through the air, and we didn't have 20 different winners from 20 different races, etc. But I don't think that would add to Formula One. I mean, it might be exciting as a bit of a one-off, as an anomaly, which happened in 2012, as you say. But if it was a regular thing, then it would definitely take away from Formula One, which is all about many different things. Over many different years. So whatever Formula One means to you, get in touch and let us know. Let's fight back against the tide of people who struggle to find positive things to say about Formula One. Yeah. Anyway,
they don't believe.
Maybe it's that. I mean, as I think was it you, Connor, who mentioned about the way that sport is being consumed now, and it is just the way that sport is being consumed that a lot of people judge their enjoyment of, because if it's not on their number one channel, if it's not on their Formula One channel, and let's not forget the UK forever never had a dedicated F1 channel, and then when it did, the tidal wave of negativity about Sky F1 started, which I find ludicrous, to be honest. So
we've seen the same thing with other sports. Sorry, but football's had that issue for decades now.
Yeah, so, I mean, even when all the rest of the world and, in Europe, going back to the mid-90s, had dedicated F1 channels, there was F1 Digital Plus, and we never had that in the UK. We had like 1 year of it in 2002 and stuff, but as I said, going back to my original point, Formula One in this country this year is probably as good as it has ever been in terms of enjoyment as a viewer, I would say.
We have more exposure. I would leave it on the point of we have more access and more exposure than ever before.
Exactly. And it's only down to you to translate how you consume that sport, and whether you decide to change it into a positive or a negative, Nigel.
Well, if you do read some of my articles, I do try to be as positive as possible. It is hard.
I suppose you've eventually got to say something good about it. Nigel's F1 articles are particularly interesting as well, and he does, for those who don't know, rate all of the gives them what is it, like performance points or
1
like
to 10.
Rates them out of 10, which I know a lot of the rest of the internet have raised an eyebrow at when they've found out that you only rated so-and-so, you got driver of the day, a 3, for example. I've always been meaning to ask you, though, how do you ever come by that? I know you explain a bit of it in the articles, but overall, how do you arrive at those ratings that you do on our website?
From watching a bit of an analysis, I guess, looking back at the races, the midfield's the hardest bit, actually. At the front, it's quite easy to tell, and you base it against previous races, previous forms. So, for example, I think I've only given like 4 or 5 10 out of 10s in the last 12 months, because to do that, they would have had to have done, like, outperformed a car, basically, or done an amazing drive.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the lowest I've given, I think, is a 2 or 3. I don't think I've given a 1. But yeah,
that sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, so I'm going to do it this weekend at Monaco, crashing every session or something.
Well, I mean, it was you that did say earlier in the show that you wanted lots of different drivers winning, and the only way that's really going to happen is if there's going to be lots of different people crashing and lots of chaos.
I just want a bit more competition at the front, that's all. We've got it in the midfield. If you take away the front, the midfield, that'll be insane. So that's all I'm saying.
And that's what we're saying as well. Take away the immense focus on what's happening up front and look further behind, and you will find lots and lots and lots of great stories and interesting things, and some other interesting battles, because there's more than just two teams in F1, basically, aren't there? So I feel like we are coming to a natural conclusion on the end of this subject, unless Connor's got anything positive to add.
That we'll be here covering it all the time, and you can happily tune in at your leisure at any point.
Yeah, we do that anyway. But yes, no, genuinely, we check out the website, motorsport.radio. Nigel Chew's interesting driver ratings following every Grand Prix, and also Connor Jackson's occasional articles about Formula One as well.